I never thought being captain of the basketball team would lead to this moment, standing in the empty locker room with Marcus, my heart pounding harder than it ever did during any game. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the metal lockers, and the smell of sweat and disinfectant hung in the air like a reminder of everything we'd shared over the past 3 years. If this story hits you, drop a heart in the comments. Marcus had always been different from the other guys on the team. Where they were loud and boisterous, he was quiet and thoughtful. Where they talked about girls constantly, he listened with a distant smile that never quite reached his eyes. I'd noticed these things about him long before I understood what they meant, long before I understood what the tight feeling in my chest meant when I watched him shoot free throws after practice, his movements fluid and graceful in a way that made me forget to breathe. The season had started like any other. Coach Williams had announced the roster in August, and there we were again, Marcus and me, listed as co-captains for our senior year. It should have been the culmination of everything we'd worked for since freshman year, when we were both scrappy kids fighting for playing time on junior varsity. Instead, it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing that one wrong step would send everything tumbling into chaos. "You ready for this, Captain?" Marcus had asked me that first day of practice, bumping my shoulder with his as we walked onto the court. The contact was brief, casual, the kind of thing teammates did 100 times without thinking. But I felt it like electricity, a jolt that traveled from my shoulder straight to my stomach and settled there like a stone. "Born ready," I'd replied, forcing a grin that felt too wide, too forced. Marcus had laughed, that low, warm sound that I'd been hearing in my dreams for months, and jogged ahead to start warming up. That's when I knew I was in trouble. The first few weeks of practice were torture in the most exquisite way. Every drill that paired us together, every time coach had us demonstrate plays for the younger guys, every moment when Marcus would lean close to discuss strategy, I felt like I was slowly drowning. His presence was everywhere, unavoidable and intoxicating. The way he moved on the court was poetry in motion, all controlled power and natural grace. When he smiled, really smiled, it transformed his entire face, made his dark eyes crinkle at the corners, and revealed the small scar on his upper lip that he'd gotten falling off his bike when he was 7. I knew that story because I'd been there when it happened. We'd been neighbors since we were kids, our families close enough that summer barbecues and holiday gatherings were shared affairs. I'd watched Marcus grow from a gangly kid with 2 big feet into this confident, beautiful young man who could sink a three-pointer with his eyes closed and had half the school crushing on him. What none of them knew, what I was only beginning to understand myself, was that Marcus had never shown interest in any of the girls who flirted with him in the hallways or left notes in his locker. "Earth to Alex," Marcus said one afternoon after a particularly brutal practice. I realized I'd been staring at him while he toweled off, watching droplets of sweat trace paths down his neck and disappear beneath the collar of his practice jersey. "You okay, man? You've been weird lately." "Just tired," I mumbled, grabbing my own towel and burying my face in it to hide the flush that I knew was creeping up my neck. "Coach has been running us into the ground." Marcus was quiet for a moment, and when I looked up, he was studying me with an expression I couldn't read. "Yeah," he said finally. "Maybe that's it." But I could tell he didn't believe me, and the knowing look in his eyes made my stomach flip in a way that was becoming all too familiar. The breaking point came 3 weeks later, during what should have been a routine away game against our biggest rivals. We were down by 12 points at halftime, and the locker room was thick with frustration and disappointment. Coach Williams was pacing back and forth, his face red with anger as he outlined everything we'd done wrong in the first half. "You're playing like strangers out there," he barked, stopping in front of Marcus and me. "Where's the communication? Where's the leadership? You two are supposed to be setting the example, and instead you're playing like you've never seen each other before." He wasn't wrong. For weeks, I'd been so focused on hiding my feelings, on maintaining the careful distance I thought I needed to keep between us, that I'd forgotten how to be Marcus's teammate. Our usual rhythm was off, our passes mistimed, our plays disjointed. The chemistry that had made us such an effective duo on the court had evaporated, replaced by an awkwardness that everyone could see but no one understood. "Fix it," Coach said, his voice low and dangerous. "Whatever's going on between you two, fix it, or you'll both be riding the bench for the rest of the season." The second half was a disaster. We lost by 23 points, our worst defeat in 3 years. The bus ride home was silent except for the rumble of the engine and the occasional sniffle from one of the younger players. I sat in my usual seat near the back, staring out the window at the dark highway, feeling like I'd let everyone down. Marcus slid into the seat beside me without a word. We sat in silence for several miles before he finally spoke. "We need to talk," he said quietly, his voice barely audible over the engine noise. My throat felt tight. "About what?" "You know what." He turned to look at me, and even in the dim light from the highway, I could see the intensity in his eyes. "Whatever's been going on with you, it's affecting the team. It's affecting us." "Nothing's going on," I said automatically, but the words felt hollow even to me. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "My house. Tomorrow after practice. We're going to figure this out." It wasn't a request. The next day's practice was even worse than the game had been. Every play fell apart. Every pass was just slightly off target. Every defensive rotation was a beat too slow. Coach finally called it early, throwing his clipboard down in disgust and stalking off the court without another word. "Nice going, captains," Jake muttered as he walked past us toward the locker room. "Way to lead by example." The rest of the team filed out in silence, leaving Marcus and me alone on the court. The gymnasium felt cavernous without the usual chatter and laughter, the only sound the echo of our breathing and the distant hum of the ventilation system. "This can't continue," Marcus said, not looking at me as he gathered up the scattered basketballs. "Whatever's eating at you, you need to deal with it." "It's not that simple," I said, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. "Then make it simple." He straightened up, fixing me with that direct stare that had always been able to see right through me. "We've been friends for 12 years, Alex. Teammates for 4. I know when something's wrong." I wanted to tell him. God, I wanted to tell him so badly that the words felt like they were clawing at my throat, demanding to be released. But the fear was stronger, the paralyzing terror of losing everything we'd built together, of watching his face change from concern to disgust or pity or worse. "I can't," I whispered. Something shifted in Marcus's expression, a flicker of understanding that made my chest tighten. "Can't or won't?" Before I could answer, he was walking away, leaving me alone in the middle of the court with my heart hammering against my ribs and the taste of regret bitter on my tongue. His house was only a 10-minute drive from school, but it felt like the longest journey of my life. I sat in my car in his driveway for 5 minutes, gripping the steering wheel and trying to convince myself to just drive away. But I couldn't. Whatever was about to happen, whatever this conversation would cost me, I owed it to him to show up. Mrs. Rodriguez answered the door with her usual warm smile. "Alex, honey, how are you?" Marcus is upstairs in his room. I'd been in Marcus's room hundreds of times over the years, but walking up those familiar stairs felt different now, weighted with significance I couldn't quite name. I knocked on his door, and his voice called for me to come in. He was sitting at his desk, supposedly working on homework, but I could tell his attention wasn't on the textbook in front of him. When he looked up at me, his expression was carefully neutral, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was set just a little too tight. "Close the door," he said quietly. I did, and the soft click of the latch seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Marcus stood up, crossing to where I stood frozen by the door, and for a moment we just looked at each other. He was close enough that I could smell his cologne, the familiar scent that had been driving me crazy for months. "Now," he said, his voice low and steady, "tell me the truth." The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. I could feel my heart pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it, could feel the sweat beading on my palms despite the cool air from his ceiling fan. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading and longing for in equal measure. "Marcus," I started, then stopped, my voice cracking like I was 13 again. "The truth, Alex." He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head up slightly to meet his eyes. "Whatever it is that's been eating at you, whatever's been making you act like a stranger on the court, I need to know. The team needs to know. I need to know." I closed my eyes, trying to find the courage that had always come so easily to me on the basketball court but seemed impossible to summon now. When I opened them again, Marcus was still there, still waiting, still looking at me with that mixture of concern and determination that was so uniquely him. "You want the truth?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "The truth is that I've been in love with you for months, and it's killing me." The words hung in the air between us like a confession and an accusation all at once. Marcus's expression didn't change immediately, but I saw something flicker in his eyes, a recognition that made my stomach lurch with hope and terror. "How long?" he asked quietly. "I don't know exactly. Maybe since the beginning of the season. Maybe longer." I ran a hand through my hair, a nervous gesture I'd never been able to break. I kept telling myself it was just admiration, you know? That I was just impressed by your game, your leadership. But then I started noticing other things. The way you laugh when you think something's really funny, not just polite laughter. The way you get this little crease between your eyebrows when you're concentrating. The way you always make sure the younger guys feel included. Marcus was quiet, and the silence stretched between us until I couldn't stand it anymore. I know this changes everything, I continued, the words tumbling out in a rush. I know it makes things weird, and I'm sorry. I tried to keep it to myself, tried to just push through it. But it's affecting my game, affecting the team, and I can't. Alex. Marcus's voice cut through my rambling, gentle but firm. Stop. I stopped, my mouth hanging open mid-sentence, and waited for the rejection I was sure was coming. Instead, Marcus reached up and touched my face, his palm warm against my cheek. You think you're the only one who's been struggling? He asked softly. You think I haven't noticed the way you look at me sometimes, like you're seeing something that scares you? You think I haven't been going crazy trying to figure out if I was imagining things? My breath caught in my throat. What are you saying? I'm saying you're not alone in this. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, and I felt like I might collapse from the tenderness of it. I'm saying I've been having the same thoughts, the same feelings, and I've been just as terrified as you are. The relief that flooded through me was so intense it made me dizzy. Really? Really? He smiled then, that genuine smile that transformed his whole face, and I felt like the sun had just come out after weeks of rain. God, Alex, I thought I was losing my mind. I kept thinking maybe I was reading too much into things. Maybe I was just seeing what I wanted to see. What changed your mind? Tonight. The way you looked when you walked in here, like you were walking to your execution. The way you've been avoiding me for weeks, like being near me was painful. His other hand came up to frame my face, and I leaned into the touch without thinking. Nobody acts like that unless there's something real at stake. I laughed, a shaky sound that was half relief and half hysteria. So what now? Now we figure it out together. He leaned his forehead against mine, and I could feel his breath warm against my lips. We take it slow, we don't let it affect the team, and we see where this goes. And if it doesn't work out, then we deal with that when it happens. His voice was steady, confident in a way that made me believe him. But Alex, I've been your friend for 12 years. Whatever happens between us, that's not going to change. I wanted to kiss him then, wanted it so badly that my lips actually tingled with the anticipation. But something held me back, some last vestige of fear or uncertainty. What about the team? I asked. What about our parents, our friends? What about them? Marcus pulled back slightly to look at me, his expression serious. This is about us, Alex. Not them. And if they can't handle it, that's their problem, not ours. The certainty in his voice, the calm acceptance, made something inside me settle. This was Marcus, the same person who'd had my back through every challenge we'd faced together. Of course he'd have it now too. I'm scared, I admitted. Me too. He smiled again, softer this time. But I'm more scared of pretending this isn't happening. I'm more scared of losing what we could have because we're too afraid to try. That night, we talked until almost midnight. We sat on his bed, not touching except for the occasional brush of fingers or bump of shoulders, and mapped out the careful territory of this new thing between us. We talked about when we'd first started noticing each other differently, about the moments that had made us question everything we thought we knew about ourselves. Marcus told me about the night he'd realized he was attracted to me, how he'd lain awake for hours trying to convince himself it was just confusion. I told him about the dreams I'd been having, the way I'd started looking forward to practice just to be near him. By the time I drove home, the world felt different somehow, like everything had been shifted slightly to the left and was now falling into a pattern that made more sense. The fear was still there, lurking around the edges of my consciousness, but it was overshadowed by something else, hope. The next day at practice, something had shifted between us, but it wasn't the awkwardness I'd been dreading. Instead, there was a new ease, a comfort that translated into better communication on the court. Our passes were crisp again, our defensive rotation smooth and instinctive. Coach Williams noticed immediately. That's more like it, he said during a water break. Whatever you two worked out, keep it up. Jake jogged over to where Marcus and I were standing, sweat dripping from his hair. Thank God you guys got your act together. I was starting to think we were going to have to stage an intervention. Just had some things to work through, Marcus said easily, catching my eye with a small smile that made my stomach flutter. Well, work through them faster next time, Jake said with a grin. We've got a championship to win. Over the next few weeks, we fell into a new rhythm. At school and during practice, we were the same teammates we'd always been, but there was an undercurrent now, awareness that hummed between us like electricity. Marcus would brush past me in the hallway, his hand grazing mine for just a moment. I would lean closer than necessary when we were looking at plays on Coach's whiteboard, close enough to catch his scent and feel the warmth radiating from his skin. Our first real date, if you could call it that, was a Tuesday night in early November. We told our parents we were going to see a movie, which wasn't technically a lie. We just didn't mention that we spent most of the movie holding hands at the dark theater, my thumb tracing circles on his palm while explosions lit up the screen. "This is nice," Marcus whispered during a particularly quiet scene, his breath warm against my ear. "Yeah," I whispered back, squeezing his hand. "It is." Walking out of the theater together, still buzzing from the simple intimacy of it, I felt like I was floating. Marcus suggested we drive around for a while, neither of us ready for the evening to end. We ended up at the park where we used to play pickup games as kids, sitting on the swings in the dim light from the street lamps. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said, his voice quiet in the cool night air. "Anything. When did you know? I mean, really know, not just suspect." I thought about it for a moment, pushing myself gently back and forth on the swing. "Remember that game against Central about a month ago? You got fouled hard going to the basket, and for a second, I thought you were really hurt." "I remember. Took me a minute to get back up." "Yeah." And in that minute, when I thought something might be seriously wrong, I felt like my world was ending. Not because we might lose our best player, but because the idea of you being hurt, really hurt, was unbearable. I looked over at him, his profile outlined by the streetlight. That's when I knew it wasn't just friendship anymore. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "For me, it was the night after we lost to Jefferson. You were so angry at yourself, so convinced you'd let everyone down. I wanted to tell you that you were wrong, that you were the best captain the team had ever had, that you were." He trailed off, shaking his head. "I wanted to tell you things that friends don't say to each other." "What kind of things?" He turned to look at me, his expression serious. "That you're beautiful when you're passionate about something. That watching you play basketball is like watching art in motion. That I'd been falling for you for months and was too scared to admit it." My breath caught in my throat. "Marcus, I know it's a lot," he said quickly. "I know we're taking this slow, and I don't want to pressure you or make you uncomfortable. I needed you to know." Instead of answering with words, I stood up from my swing and walked over to him. He looked up at me, his eyes wide and uncertain, and I leaned down and kissed him. It was soft and tentative at first, barely more than a brush of lips, but when Marcus's hand came up to cup the back of my neck, it deepened into something more. He tasted like the mint gum he was always chewing, and his lips were warm and soft and perfect. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "Was that okay?" I asked, suddenly uncertain. "More than okay," Marcus said, his voice rough. "That was perfect." We stayed at the park for another hour, talking and kissing and marveling at how natural it all felt. When Marcus finally drove me back to get my car, I felt like I was walking on air. "See you tomorrow," he said as I got out of his car. "See you tomorrow," I replied, and the promise in those simple words made my chest tight with happiness. The next few weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and secret smiles. We were careful at school, maintaining the same friendship we'd always had in public while savoring the private moments when we could be something more. Marcus would text me late at night, sweet messages that made me fall asleep smiling. I would find reasons to stay after practice, helping him with extra shooting drills that were really just excuses to be alone together. Our game improved dramatically. The chemistry that had always made us effective teammates was now enhanced by this deeper understanding, this intimate knowledge of each other that translated into perfect timing on the court. We won 7 games in a row, climbing to the top of our conference standings and earning attention from college scouts. "You two are playing like you can read each other's minds," Coach Williams said after a particularly dominant victory. "Whatever you're doing, don't change it." If only he knew, I thought, catching Marcus's amused glance across the locker room. But it wasn't all easy. There were moments when the weight of keeping our relationship secret felt crushing. Like when Stephanie Chen asked Marcus to the winter formal in front of half the cafeteria, and I had to watch him politely decline while my stomach churned with jealousy. Or when my dad made an offhand comment about when I was going to bring a nice girl home, and I had to excuse myself from dinner before I said something I'd regret. The hardest part was the isolation. We couldn't talk to our friends about our relationship, couldn't seek advice or support from the people who knew us best. It was just Marcus and me, figuring it out as we went along, making mistakes and learning from them in private. "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like if we could just be open about this," Marcus said one evening as we sat in his car in the empty parking lot behind the grocery store. It had become one of our regular meeting spots, anonymous enough that we could hold hands and talk without worrying about being seen. "Scary," I said honestly, "but also kind of amazing." Yeah. He was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing patterns on the back of my hand. My cousin David came out to his family last year. He said it was the hardest thing he'd ever done, but also the most freeing. How did they take it? Better than he expected. My aunt cried, but she said it was because she was sad he'd felt like he had to hide it for so long. Marcus looked over at me. Made me think about what we're doing, keeping this secret. I felt a familiar knot of anxiety form in my stomach. Are you saying you want to tell people? I don't know. Maybe. Eventually. He squeezed my hand. I just hate feeling like we're doing something wrong when this is the most right thing I've ever felt. I understood what he meant. Being with Marcus felt natural in a way that nothing else in my life ever had. When we were together, really together, the world made sense in a way it never had before. But the thought of other people knowing, of facing their judgment and questions and potential rejection, still terrified me. Can we just see how the season goes? I asked. Maybe after basketball's over, when there's less pressure, we can think about it. Marcus nodded, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes, and it made my chest ache with guilt. The conversation stayed with me for days, coloring every interaction we had. I found myself watching other couples in the hallways, envying their easy public affection, the way they could hold hands and kiss and be themselves without fear. But I also noticed the way some people looked at David Martinez, Marcus's cousin, when he visited our school for a game. The whispers and sideways glances, the casual cruelty of teenage judgment. It reinforced every fear I had about what coming out would mean. Things came to a head the week before winter break. We were playing our biggest rival, a game that would determine the conference championship. The gym was packed, college scouts filling the bleachers, local news cameras capturing every play. It was the kind of game we'd dreamed about since we were kids. We were down by 3 points with 30 seconds left when Marcus drove hard to the basket. The defender caught him with an elbow to the ribs, and Marcus went down hard, clutching his side and gasping for breath. The referee called a flagrant foul, but all I could see was Marcus on the ground, his face twisted in pain. I was kneeling beside him before I realized I'd moved, my hands hovering over him as the trainer rushed onto the court. Are you okay? Can you breathe? I'm fine, Marcus wheezed, but his face was pale and I could see him struggling not to show how much he was hurting. Take your time, the trainer said, checking Marcus's ribs for obvious injury. Nothing feels broken, but you might have some bruising. The crowd was on its feet, the noise deafening, but all I could focus on was Marcus. When he finally sat up, wincing, I felt like I could breathe again. Can you play? Coach Williams asked, crouching down beside us. Marcus nodded, getting slowly to his feet with help from the trainer and me. I'm good. But I could tell he wasn't. I could see the way he favored his left side, the careful way he moved as we lined up for his free throws. He made both shots, tying the game, but I knew he was playing hurt. The final 30 seconds were a blur of timeouts and fouled shots and desperate defense. With 3 seconds left, we had the ball and a chance to win. Coach drew up a play for Marcus, our best shooter, but as we broke the huddle, I caught his eye and saw the pain he was trying to hide. The inbound pass came to me instead. I had a clear shot, an easy three-pointer that would win the game, but something made me hesitate. In that split second, I saw Marcus cutting to the basket, saw the defender who was supposed to be guarding him get caught watching the ball. Without thinking, I fired a pass across the court. Marcus caught it with one hand, went up despite the obvious pain in his ribs, and scored the winning basket just as the buzzer sounded. The gym erupted. Our teammates mobbed Marcus, lifting him up despite his protests about his ribs. I stood at center court, watching the celebration, feeling oddly detached from it all. We'd won the conference championship, achieved everything we'd worked for, but all I could think about was the look on Marcus's face when he'd caught that pass. The surprise, then the understanding, then something else. Something that looked like love. Later, after the interviews and the trophy presentation and the team celebration at Pizza Palace, Marcus and I found ourselves alone in the school parking lot. Most of our teammates had gone home or to various after-parties, but neither of us felt like celebrating with a crowd. That was a hell of a pass, Marcus said, leaning against his car. He was moving more easily now, the adrenaline having worn off and the pain reduced to a manageable ache. You were open, I said simply. I wasn't the play. You were the right play. Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying my face in the dim light from the parking lot lamps. You gave up a game-winning shot for me. I gave up a shot so the team could win. Alex. His voice was soft, serious. You gave up your moment for me. I shrugged, suddenly uncomfortable with the intensity of his gaze. It was the right basketball play. Was it? The question hung between us, loaded with meaning I wasn't sure I was ready to unpack. Because the truth was, it hadn't been about basketball at all. In that moment, seeing Marcus hurt and trying to push through it anyway, all I'd wanted was to take care of him, to make sure he got the recognition he deserved. The shot, the glory, none of it had mattered compared to that. "I love you," Marcus said suddenly, the words cutting through the cold night air like a blade. I felt like all the air had been sucked out of my lungs. "Marcus, I know we haven't talked about it. I know we're taking things slow, but I can't keep pretending this is just some casual thing." He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving mine. "What you did tonight, the way you've been there for me, the way you see me. I love you, Alex. I'm in love with you." The words I'd been holding back for months rose in my throat, demanding to be spoken. "I love you too." Saying it out loud felt like jumping off a cliff, terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. Marcus's face broke into a smile so bright it could have powered the entire parking lot. Yeah. I laughed, the sound shaky with relief and joy. "God, yes. I love you so much it scares me." Marcus closed the distance between us then, cupping my face in his hands and kissing me with a passion that made my knees weak. I could taste the salt of happy tears on his lips, though I wasn't sure if they were his or mine. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard, our foreheads pressed together in the cold December air. "So what now?" I asked. "Now we figure out how to do this for real," Marcus said. "No more hiding, no more pretending. We figure out how to be together, really together." The thought still scared me, but looking at Marcus, seeing the love and determination in his eyes, I felt something shift inside me. Maybe it was time to stop being afraid of what other people might think and start focusing on what we wanted. "Okay," I said. "Let's figure it out." The rest of winter break passed in a haze of happiness and planning. We spent almost every day together, sometimes at his house, sometimes at mine, getting used to the idea that we didn't have to hide our feelings anymore, at least not from each other. We talked about when and how to tell our families, our friends, our teammates. We researched colleges that would accept us both, places where we could continue to be together without having to choose between our relationship and our futures. My parents noticed the change in me immediately. I was happier, more relaxed, more present during family dinners and holiday gatherings. When my mom asked if I was seeing someone, I managed to deflect with a joke about being too focused on basketball, but I could see the curiosity in her eyes. "You seem different," she said one evening as we cleaned up after dinner. "Good different. Like you figured something out." "Maybe I have," I said, and it was the closest to the truth I'd come with anyone in my family. Marcus was having similar conversations with his parents. His mom had always been perceptive, and she'd started asking pointed questions about why he never seemed interested in dating, why he spent so much time with me, why he looked so happy lately. "I think she knows," Marcus told me one afternoon as we sat in his room, supposedly working on college applications but really just enjoying being able to be close to each other without fear. Or at least suspects. Would that be so bad? Marcus considered this. "No, I don't think it would. She's always been pretty open-minded. It's my dad I'm worried about." I understood. Mr. Rodriguez was a good man, but he came from a traditional background, and I'd heard him make comments about masculinity and what was expected of men that made me nervous about how he'd react to the news that his son was gay. "We don't have to tell anyone until we're ready," I said, taking Marcus's hand and lacing our fingers together. "I know, but I'm getting tired of being ready." He squeezed my hand. "I want to be able to hold your hand in public. I want to take you to prom. I want people to know that you're mine and I'm yours." The possessiveness in his voice made something warm unfurl in my chest. "I want that too." "Then let's do it. After the holidays, when school starts back up, let's start telling people." The idea terrified me and thrilled me in equal measure. Starting with who? Our families first. Then maybe Jake and some of the other guys on the team. See how it goes. I nodded, trying to ignore the anxiety that was already building in my stomach. "Okay. Yeah, let's do it." But as the holidays ended and the new semester began, I found myself making excuses. Maybe we should wait until after the playoffs. Maybe we should wait until we'd both committed to colleges. Maybe we should wait until we were 18, until we had more independence, until the timing was better. Marcus was patient at first, understanding my fears because he shared many of them. But as the weeks passed and I kept finding reasons to delay, I could see his frustration growing. "Alex, we've been together for 3 months, he said one evening after practice. We were in his car in our usual spot behind the grocery store, but the atmosphere was tense instead of comfortable. I'm tired of feeling like I'm your dirty secret. You're not, I said quickly. You know you're not. Do I? Because from where I'm sitting, it sure feels like you're ashamed of me. Of us. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. That's not fair. You know I love you. I know you say you love me. But love isn't just words, Alex. It's actions. It's being willing to fight for what matters to you. I am fighting. I'm here, aren't I? I'm with you. In secret. In the dark. In empty parking lots where no one can see us. Marcus's voice was thick with hurt and frustration. When was the last time we went on a real date? When was the last time we did something together that didn't involve sneaking around? I didn't have an answer for that, because he was right. Our relationship had become a series of stolen moments and hidden touches, and while I told myself it was necessary, I knew it was taking a toll on both of us. I need time, I said finally. How much time? Marcus's voice was quiet now, resigned. Because I can't keep doing this indefinitely, Alex. I can't keep pretending that being with you in secret is enough. What are you saying? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring out the windshield at the empty parking lot. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I'm saying that if you can't see a future where we're together for real, where we don't have to hide, then maybe we need to reconsider what we're doing. The words hit me like ice water. You want to break up? I don't want to. But I can't keep living in limbo either. He turned to look at me, and I could see the pain in his eyes. I love you, Alex. I love you more than I've ever loved anyone. But I won't spend the rest of my life hiding who I am, and I won't ask you to either. So you need to decide what you want. I want you, I said desperately. I want us. Then prove it. The challenge hung between us like a gauntlet thrown down. I wanted to rise to it, wanted to be the brave, confident person Marcus deserved. But the fear was still there, cold and paralyzing, whispering all the reasons why coming out was a mistake. I need to think, I said finally. Marcus nodded, but I could see the disappointment in his expression. Okay. But Alex? Don't think too long. Some things are worth the risk. He drove me back to my car in silence, and when I got out, he didn't say goodbye. I sat in my car for 20 minutes after he drove away, my hands shaking as I tried to process what had just happened. The relationship I'd been so careful to protect was falling apart anyway, crumbling under the weight of my own fear. The next few days were torture. Marcus was polite but distant at practice, professional but cold. Our chemistry on the court suffered immediately, and Coach Williams noticed. What's going on with you two? He asked after a particularly disjointed scrimmage. You're playing like strangers again. Just working through some strategy differences, Marcus said smoothly, not looking at me. Well, work through them faster. We've got playoffs starting next week. That night, I called my older brother Tyler, who was home from college for the weekend. Tyler had always been the person I turned to when I needed advice, the one who could help me see situations clearly when I was too close to them. You sound like hell, he said when he answered the phone. Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear. Seriously, what's wrong? You've been moping around the house all week. I took a deep breath, making a decision that terrified me. Can you come over? I need to talk to someone, and I need it to be you. Tyler arrived 20 minutes later, armed with pizza and the kind of patience that had gotten me through countless crises over the years. We sat in my room, the door closed, and for the first time in months, I told someone the truth. I'm gay, I said, the words feeling strange and liberating on my tongue. And I'm in love with Marcus Rodriguez. Tyler was quiet for a long moment, processing what I'd told him. Then he reached over and squeezed my shoulder. Thank you for trusting me with this, he said simply. You're not. Surprised? Disgusted? Disappointed? Surprised? A little. Disgusted? Never. Disappointed? Tyler shook his head. Alex, the only thing I'm disappointed about is that you felt like you had to carry this alone for so long. The relief that flooded through me was so intense it brought tears to my eyes. Really? Really? You're my little brother, and I love you no matter what. Besides, he grinned, I always liked Marcus. He's good for you. Was good for me. I think I screwed it up. I told Tyler everything then. About the months of hiding, about Marcus's ultimatum, about my paralyzing fear of what coming out would mean. Tyler listened without judgment, asking occasional questions, but mostly just letting me get it all out. So what are you going to do? He asked when I finished. I don't know. I'm terrified of telling people, but I'm more terrified of losing him. Then that's your answer right there. Tyler leaned back against my headboard. Alex, I've watched you play basketball for years. You've never been afraid to take the big shot, to make the risky play when it mattered. This isn't any different. It feels different. Because the stakes are higher. But that's exactly why you can't let fear make the decision for you. Tyler was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? I've been watching you this year, and you've been happier than I've ever seen you. More confident, more yourself. That's not a coincidence. What do you mean? I mean that being with Marcus, even in secret, has made you more who you're supposed to be. Imagine what it could be like if you didn't have to hide it. That night, I lay awake thinking about what Tyler had said. I thought about all the moments with Marcus that had felt stolen, all the times I'd wanted to reach for his hand in public and stopped myself, all the conversations we'd had about our future that were shadowed by uncertainty. I thought about the pass I'd made in the championship game, how I'd acted on instinct to do what felt right rather than what was safe. Maybe it was time to apply that same philosophy to the rest of my life. The next morning, I found Marcus at his locker before first period. He looked tired, like he hadn't been sleeping well either, and my heart ached at the sight of him. Can we talk? I asked. He glanced around the crowded hallway, then nodded. Not here. We found an empty classroom, and Marcus closed the door behind us. For a moment, we just looked at each other, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between us. I told Tyler, I said finally. Marcus's eyes widened. You what? Last night? I told him about us, about everything. And he was amazing about it. Supportive and understanding and everything I'd hoped for but was too scared to expect. Alex. Marcus's voice was soft, cautious. What are you saying? I'm saying you're right. I'm saying that hiding us, is killing me just as much as it's killing you. I took a step closer to him. I'm saying that I love you too much to keep pretending I don't. Hope flickered in Marcus's eyes, but his expression remained guarded. And what are you going to do about it? I'm going to tell my parents tonight. And then, if you'll still have me, I want to tell everyone else too. The smile that spread across Marcus's face was like sunrise after the longest night. Are you sure? I'm terrified, I admit it. But I'm sure. You're worth the risk, Marcus. We're worth the risk. He crossed the room in 2 quick strides and kissed me, right there in the empty classroom with the door unlocked and the possibility that anyone could walk in. It was reckless and brave and everything I'd been too scared to be for months. I love you, he whispered against my lips. I love you too. That afternoon, I sat my parents down in the living room and told them the truth. It was one of the hardest conversations I'd ever had, but also one of the most important. My mom cried, but like Marcus's aunt, she said it was because she was sad I'd felt like I had to hide it. My dad was quiet for a long time, processing, but when he finally spoke, it was to ask if Marcus made me happy. Happier than I've ever been, I said. Then that's what matters, he said simply. Marcus had a similar conversation with his parents that same evening. His mom had suspected for months and was relieved to finally have confirmation. His dad struggled more, but he loved his son, and love won out over prejudice. The next day at school, we told Jake and a few of our closest friends on the team. The reactions were mixed but mostly positive. Some were surprised, others said they'd suspected something was going on. A few were uncomfortable at first, but they came around. So this is why you guys have been playing like you're telepathic, Jake said with a grin. It all makes sense now. Word spread quickly through the school as it always does. There were whispers and stares, a few ugly comments from people who didn't matter, but there was also support from places I hadn't expected. Teachers who made a point of treating us normally, classmates who went out of their way to be inclusive, friends who stepped up to defend us when others didn't. The hardest part was the basketball team. Not because of our teammates, who had mostly rallied around us, but because of the pressure it added to our performance. Every game felt like we were representing not just our school but our entire community's attitude toward gay athletes. No pressure, Marcus joked before our first playoff game, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. We've got this, I said, squeezing his hand in the tunnel before we ran onto the court. Whatever happens out there, we've got each other. We played that game like our lives depended on it, and maybe in some ways they did. Every pass was perfect, every shot was pure, every defensive rotation was flawless. We won by 15 points, and when the final buzzer sounded, Marcus grabbed me in a hug that lasted just a beat longer than a normal teammate celebration. The local newspaper ran a story about us the next week. Local basketball stars find love on and off the court, the headline read. The article was respectful and positive, focusing on our relationship and our performance as team leaders. When I read it, I felt proud instead of ashamed for the first time in months. We made it all the way to the state semifinals that year before losing to the eventual champions. It was a heartbreaking end to our high school careers, but as we sat in the locker room afterward, still in our uniforms, I realized that basketball had given me something more valuable than any trophy. No regrets? Marcus asked, his voice hoarse from crying over the loss. I looked around the locker room at our teammates, who had become our family. I thought about our families at home, who had embraced us in our relationship. I thought about the college we'd both committed to, where we could continue to be together and continue to play the game we loved. No regrets, I said, taking his hand right there in front of everyone. Not a single one. Graduation came and went in a blur of ceremonies and parties and tearful goodbyes. Marcus and I were heading to the same university in the fall, both of us recruited for their basketball program. It felt like the perfect ending to our high school story and the perfect beginning to whatever came next. The night before we left for college, we sat on the same swings where we'd had our first real conversation about our feelings. The park was quiet, lit only by street lamps and stars, and I felt like we'd come full circle. You know what I keep thinking about? Marcus said, pushing himself gently back and forth on the swing. What? That night when you told me you loved me. How scared you looked, how brave you were anyway. I smiled at the memory. I was terrified. But you did it anyway. You told me the truth, even though you didn't know how I'd react. Best decision I ever made. Marcus stopped swinging and turned to look at me. I'm proud of you, you know, for coming out, for being open about us, for not letting fear make your decisions. I'm proud of us, I said. For fighting for this, for not giving up when it got hard. Think we'll make it? Long term? I mean. I considered the question seriously. We were 18 years old, about to start college, with so much uncertainty ahead of us. But when I looked at Marcus, at the boy who had become my best friend and then my first love, I felt nothing but confidence. Yeah, I said. I think we'll make it. Marcus smiled, that brilliant smile that had been making my heart skip beats for over a year now. Me too. As we sat there in the quiet park, holding hands and talking about our future, I thought about how much had changed since that night in the locker room when Marcus had locked the door and demanded the truth. I'd been so afraid of what that truth would cost me, but it had given me everything instead. Sometimes the scariest thing you can do is also the most important. Sometimes telling the truth, even when it terrifies you, is the only way to find out who you really are and what you're really capable of. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the person you're most afraid to tell the truth to is the person who's been waiting their whole life to hear it. We were just teammates until that moment when everything changed. Now we were so much more, and I couldn't imagine being anything else.